Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Hotel Inhumans Season 1, Episode 10. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I really like the opening, how it was stylized, kind of that, I don't know what you call that animation style, but it was kind of put on like a theater, but you could tell they were almost like puppeteered drawings. I just loved how that was stylized. I even like how they bring it back at the end of the episode during the credits. You see Danica and Chitana are stylized like that, but also at the very, very end, you see that Ikuro and Sarah are stylized like that too, which I think is pretty dope. Which I think this episode kind of showcases there is a lot of interesting parallels between them. Obviously, there's a lot of parallels between Chitana and Sarah, but I think you could also say, there's parallels between Sarah and Danica as well. But, there is a little bit of an Ikuro and Danica parallel as well. But either way, the opening was telling us kind of this Greek story of mythology of Chiron, who was basically abandoned by, it was like a centaurist who was a sage, was abandoned by the parents because it was Kronos basically having an affair. His wife actually found out about the affair and he ended up running away, and the mother not being able to kind of deal with the fact is that basically she gave birth to a child who's half human, half horse, because they had consummated their love in the form of horses, and she turned herself into a tree. He was kind of abandoned by his parents, and then other gods. I know one of them was Artemis. I can't remember what the other god was off the top of my head, but they took him in and loved him. Gave him history. It was I think prophecy and hunting and knowledge and stuff like that. And he was bathed in love, and he was able to kind of pass that on to his students. And one of them was Heracles, who ended up accidentally killing him with a poisoned arrow. And he was in so much pain that Chiron was in so much pain that they gave up their godlyhood, their immortality, to be able to peacefully die. And so that Chiron was never forgotten, Zeus took their remains and formed them into the constellation known as Sagittarius. Once again, I love me some Greek mythology. I know a little Greek mythology here and there, but I'm always fascinated with different mythologies like Greek mythology, Norse mythology, Japanese mythology, even religious, even stuff like Christianity and yada yada yada. I like the mythos. I always think it's fascinating. But we get introduced to our two characters in this arc or section of the show. We get introduced to Danica and Chitana. Chitana is the spotter, the agent, while Danica is the expert sharpshooter, and they're killing a couple this episode. And it's who were the targets this time? And Chitana was from the outside, on one hand, they seem to be this wealthy couple who gives a lot to orphans of war. But on the other side, we find out it's actually a front because they're brokers for human trafficking. So you're when they have the little parties, the alcohol you buy or the bottles you buy correlates with how many children you're buying or something like that. It's that's the beautiful duality of human beings. That's sadly sometimes you have to wonder if the person who is very good and very generous might not be hiding a terrible side. We've seen that time and time again where it's hey, this person ends up being a gross monster, regardless of whether, they're still even just playing the role of brokers makes them just as monstrous as anyone else participating in that process. So you're a cog in this disgusting machine. But it adds layers to it, because the fact is that Danica was who were they? Must mean she didn't know. I'm curious, because we learn about their story, and obviously their stories are intertwined with people who are human trafficking children. And I don't know if Danica was asking because she was curious who these targets were, because she didn't know them in general. Maybe she knew that they had to have some human trafficking element to them, or because I was thinking I wonder, has all their jobs involved human trafficking? It seems like most of them have, at least a little we've seen here and there. But like I said, it's intrinsic to, sadly, intrinsic to their history. So it makes sense why these would be the targets she would go after. But we'll get to that in a second. But it is this beautiful partnership that they have where they rely on each other. It's are we the best because I Danica am like the best sharpshooter, or is it because you, Chaitanya, are like the best spotter slash agent? So, and on their way to the hotel, which I was curious. I mean, thematically, like when they're bringing up the whole, oh, there's this meteor shower that she wants to see, but it's like it's not possible, and you're like, why is it not possible? And then you find out, oh, it's because the weather won't allow it. It's like it's going to be, it's a for being forecasted. There's going to be rain, so it's not going to be visible. Which I'm like immediately with like the mythology set up at the beginning of the episode, and also just the thematics of like the rain and the meteor shower. It just feels like you probably see the great tragedy that's going to unfold with the story being what it is. But I'll get to that, kind of explaining more as my thoughts later. But they head to the hotel, and like I brought up before about Sarah and Chitana having a lot of parallels, it's like, yeah, it's like they haven't been there in like almost 4.5 months. No, over almost borderlining 5 months. And like they're exchanging information about a group that's like, oh, we got to be wary of them and what they're up to, but we have countermeasures and stuff set up, to brace ourselves for any acts of terrorism. And they're having their back and forth, and all Danica can say is like, oh yeah, that's Chitana for you. She specifically chooses this hotel because she prefers the best of the best, and she knows that this hotel is great. In fact, she knows Sarah is so good at her job that it's like they're kindred spirits in the fact is that they are a bit of like, they're perfectionists. They always want to make sure like they're on top of everything. So Ikuru takes Danica to like their library, sorry, I say library. It's something got stuck in my head and made it so like I get very conscientious. About. I'm very aware about how the way I say library. Anyway, it's a moot point. And some of the books they pull out, one of them ends up being a constellation in mythology, which the story at the beginning is Ikuro. We heard his voiceover, but now we have the context of it's him reading that story to Danica. And I guess he maybe reads it to her every time she's here, because I don't think this is the first time she heard, or maybe it is. But we also see like she has a constellation that's being tattooed on her back of Sagittarius. So, and I thought it was interesting because like there's the whole conversation about, specifically Heracles, who has the perspective of now that after everything that's going down, like there's so much like pain and hurt in their heart because it's like, oh my god, I did this to someone I care about, accidentally killing Chiron. And it's like, it seems like Heracles will never know how Chiron really felt. And Danica's takeaway is, well, that last part is the part she never really gets, because she's like, you have a god who can kind of do anything, and then for things to kind of play out that way, she's just like, how could Chiron not have anything but resentment for Heracles? But once again, I think there's a parallel of like that's going to tragically repeat itself throughout this story. But like the fact is that's a piece of the story that she kind of gets hung up on, because she herself, it's like, oh, Chiron was taught like prophecy and all this other knowledge. She's like, hunting is all I've ever known. And for her, it's like, all I need is one more star, like, because every star on her back is one of her kills. And I wonder why it's I guess like to fully replicate Sagittarius, like you have to count like all the stars that make it up, and she needs one more to complete it, which even Chitana knows that. She's like, just one more job, just one last, and then she says, but, and that's right before she left, because Danica was like, we should take a break, but then Chitana was like, hey, I'm very good at my job as their agent, so don't worry, like, I know, like, what we can handle, what we can do, so. But yeah, we get the backstory about Danica, how she, basically what she's doing now is kind of what she's always done. She was basically put in a position to be bought by people who are human traffickers who sell children to people, and she would basically get sold to people who want like to use children as their own little personal toys, and she would sell wealthy couples over and over and over again using a different alias, a different name. And then one time during her what essentially was her last job, she gets attacked by someone, and luckily she killed them before they could kill her. But it's not till well after the fact she found out it was someone from her same organization. They were going to set her up to be the fall guy. I guess all these mysterious deaths were drawing too much attention, so they probably needed to well, we need to clear the board. We'll kill her, leave her to be the fall person, and maybe make it seem like, oh, someone killed her in self-defense or something like that. But like I said, at the time she didn't know that, and that's actually where she met Chitana, because Chitana was a maid at like her last target's place, and she's like, well, I always have to kill witnesses, but before she could kill her, Chitana was like, thank you, because it's like, even if you're going to kill me, I appreciate you, even just for a moment, you're setting me free on multiple levels. You killed the guy that had me, and you're also like free me from all this. And then Danica sees the scars on her shoulder, like, you're the same as me. We were both kind of bought and sold. And so they had nowhere to run, in fact, but because Chitana knows the place, she was able to kind of escape with Danica. And the same night they escaped, which was kind of like they were kind of rebirthed. They rose from the ashes of their old lives and kind of found a new life and new purpose. And from those ashes, that same night was the meteor shower, the very same one that's happening now. So I guess and what we saw in a flashback aspect, we see that these particular meteor showers, I guess, have happened multiple times over the years, and they've always celebrated them together. It's kind of been a thing between them. Chitana's also the one that gave her the name Danica. And like I said, they continued their work. Chitana would bring home flowers from some of like the places where they, killed some slavers, and then they actually got a bed, and they would get toast and put butter and margarine on it. It was just like they found that the beautiful thing is they found each other and they had each other. They were never away from each other, and she's also the reason why Chitana has the piercing. It was kind of her way. It's like, hey, you gave me my name. I want to repay you back by giving you this piercing, which I didn't steal from anywhere or found anywhere. I bought it from a stall market. So just showcasing how important they are for each other. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't be alive right now. I've been able to live this life that I have with the person I care about, who's like helped me. So it's just always been this not tit for tat necessarily, but they complete each other. They made getting this far in life possible, which once again, the state of what the show is, you're just like, and that's set up for a tragedy. If not both, one of them is going to die and the other one's going to sadly live on, but the other one probably won't live too much longer because they've only made it this far because they've had each other. And it's also that thing of the person who is left behind typically will die soon after, because it's like the broken heart makes it so they can't keep going on. So it's just like, this story is going to have the great tragedy it does, because these stories tend to have the tragedies time and time again. So, but especially in the end, when Sarah popped up with the box, I was like, oh God, it's going to be like a finger or something, but it ended up being her earring. Luckily, it wasn't the whole ear. So, because it's like, yeah, obviously the whole 7 of it all, what's in the box, like immediately comes to your mind. But I was like, luckily it was just the earring. But the call comes in. It's apparently like the group Chitana and Sarah were talking about earlier, specifically. I don't know if it was like specifically like the hotel that they have issues with, or was it specifically Danica and Chitana they had beef with. It might be all of them, hence why we're here. But it's because Chitana turned down a job, and and Danica's supposed to see it through. And Chitana was like, hey, when this is all said and done, we'll see the meteor shower. And for her, it's like, I knew like she picked up on that. I was like, that's a lie. Like, either she knows she's going to die, and that's kind of Danica's takeaway from it is, anytime we're ever in a situation, basically lying is supposed to be our code word. She knows we won't be able to see the meteor shower because of our circumstance, because of the rain. So it's like lying is our code word of just forget about me and run, because the job is supposed to be here in Japan. But the question is, like, what job is it exactly, and what about it made Chitana not want to take it? Even though this is supposed to be the last job, she's like, I'd rather not take this job. Maybe because she saw who it was from and knew where this was all going, and that's why she probably went by herself to try and make it say like, hey, I want us to not have to worry about this and just, or maybe she kind of offered herself up in a way of just like, all right, you can take me and just leave Danica out of this. And like, she doesn't like whatever you need, I'll do it. Just leave Danica out of it. But like, they need Danica because she's the sharpshooter, you know? In their mind, she's the most important part of this equation. They don't need Danica, which obviously I was scared because I was almost getting like this not deja vu, but like a little deja vu of like episode 1 where I'm like, is it going to be like a recording and Danica's already dead type of thing? Not Danica, sorry. Chitana was already dead. I mean, because especially like the last shot of the episode shows Danica lined up with her gun. So I think that's implying like next episode she'll probably go through with the job. I'm so curious to know what the job is and what about it made Chitana not want to take it. But obviously it's like it's interesting because as as the concierge of the hotel, they have an obligation to the guests at the hotel, and it's like, well, Chitana is someone that signed up, so it's like, and you know, so if those are her wishes to have Danica just run, but they also have to go by what Danica wants, and so maybe what she wants kind of supersedes what Chitana wants in this moment, so they're gonna help. Especially, too, because she had asked, like, oh, since the concierge are supposed to do whatever the guests ask, it's like, can you show me the meteor shower? Which obviously Ikaru is like, that's kind of like an ultra high level difficulty thing. But I'm like, he's probably going to find a way to make that happen. But like, I'm just, like I said, I'm always bracing myself for like the sad and tragic aspects of these stories. I think I've talked about it before in recording. I just know, like, whether it's, I doubt this series will get to it because I'm sure it's not covering the entire manga story, but I'm like, definitely no, it's not, because the manga's not done to my knowledge. But I just get the feeling like when this series is done, whatever ends up happening, wherever the story concludes itself as, Ikaru and Sarah are most likely both going to die. Just because, like, you can't have, and no one can be out there with too much knowledge about the hotel. That might also be, like, tied into, like, Ikaru's past, too, of, like, well, when it's time to retire, it's death. You can't just like retire because you can't die having any knowledge. You know, just like the last episode, the risk management of like, well, how much of a threat is that old man to telling people stuff about other stuff, the stuff that he's done in his hitman past, as well as stuff that could put the hotel and its guests in danger. So I think the same thing would be applicable to the concierge as well. Like, once you retire, so either you die on the job or you die afterwards. And I mean, that's the whole conversation about how, you know, the different ways hitmen exit this life, you know. So I'm sure there's a mirror held up to kind of reflect the same thing for the concierges as well. So, and I think even more so, especially when you make the parallel of, like I said, the outro having like that stylized depiction of both pairs of, you know, Danica and Chitana, as well as Ikaro and Sarah. So there adds even more of like similarities in that regard. So it's almost like whatever their story, Chitana and Danica's end, you could probably pinpoint there being probably some similarity for Ikaro and Sarah's ending as well. So, but yeah, we'll ultimately have to wait to see where the next episode ends up taking us with all this. I'd assume next episode would be the conclusion, since there's like supposed to be 13 episodes this season apparently. So I'd assume episodes 12 and 13 will be a two-parter as well. So I'm assuming this will get concluded in the next episode. But I'm curious to see what the end result is going to be. Once again, it's going to be depressing, I'm sure. But I'm curious to see how it all plays out and find out like what's at the heart of all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.